There are 25 electronics that TSA could stop, flag, or make you give up in 2026, and some of them are probably in your bag right now. Most travelers think airport security is just looking for obvious dangerous items. It's not. Now it can be something as simple as the wrong power bank, a dead laptop, a vape in the wrong bag, a smart suitcase, a heated jacket, or even a device with a label that is too faded to read. And that is what's catching people off guard. Because some of these electronics look completely normal. Some are expensive, some are things people travel with all the time. But if they're packed wrong, damaged, unlabeled, too powerful, or can't be checked properly, you could end up being told right there at security that it's not going any further. And that means one of three things. You surrender it, you miss your flight, or you stand there in panic trying to fix the problem while everyone behind you keeps moving. In this video, we're counting down 25 electronics that are causing the biggest problems at airport security in 2026. And the last few are the ones that could cost you the most money. So before you head to the airport with something TSA may not let through, let's get into it. Number 1. Cheap unbranded power banks with no clear watt-hour label. This one catches a lot more people than it should, because power banks feel so normal now. People throw them into backpacks, handbags, carry-ons, laptop sleeves, and sometimes even checked luggage without thinking twice. But TSA and FAA treat power banks as spare lithium batteries, which means they are not allowed in checked bags at all, and larger ones can also run into airline approval limits depending on the watt-hour rating. And here is where people get tripped up. It is not always the obvious giant battery brick that causes the problem. Sometimes, it is a cheap no-name power bank with faded writing, tiny print, missing specs, or no clear watt-hour label at all. If the battery details cannot be verified properly, that is when your perfectly normal charger suddenly becomes the thing slowing everything down at security. That is what makes this one so frustrating. You might have paid good money for it. It might have worked perfectly for years. You might have taken it on other trips and never had an issue. But if it is packed in the wrong place, looks questionable, or the battery information is unclear, that little charger can go from useful travel essential to instant problem. And the worst part is, this often happens when people are already stressed, already rushing, and already trying to get through the line. So now, instead of calmly heading to your gate, you are standing there digging through your bag while everyone behind you keeps moving and an agent is looking at the one thing you thought would make travel easier. The smart move is simple. Keep your power bank in your carry-on, never in checked luggage, and make sure the battery information is clearly printed and readable before you travel. FAA says batteries 0 to 100 watt-hours are generally allowed. 101 to 160 watt-hours need airline approval, and anything over 160 watt-hours is forbidden on passenger aircraft. That means a cheap mystery power bank is sometimes the worst one to bring. Number 2. Phone battery cases and charging cases packed in checked luggage. This is one of those mistakes people make because the item does not look dangerous at all. A phone charging case just looks like a normal phone case. An earbud charging case looks tiny. A battery case for your phone feels like just another accessory. But if it has a lithium battery inside, TSA and FAA do not see it as a harmless little extra. They see it as a spare battery or battery-powered device that has to be packed the right way. Spare lithium batteries and power banks are not allowed in checked bags, and battery-powered items that could create a fire risk are watched much more closely than most travelers realize. What makes this one so sneaky is that people forget it even counts. They remember the laptop, they remember the phone charger, but the battery case snapped onto the back of the phone, or the little charging case for wireless earbuds sitting in a side pocket, does not feel like one of those restricted electronics. So it gets tossed into checked luggage or packed without a second thought, and that is when the problem starts. And the reason it matters is simple. If a lithium battery overheats in the cabin, crew can respond to it much faster. In the cargo hold, that is a much bigger risk. That is why TSA and FAA rules are so much stricter about where these kinds of batteries can go. Even small battery-powered accessories can become an issue if they are packed in the wrong place. This is also the kind of thing that annoys people because it feels unfair. You are not carrying some giant gadget. You're not bringing a hoverboard. It is just a phone case. Just a charging case. Just a tiny everyday item. But airport rules do not care how normal it looks. If there is a lithium battery inside, that changes everything. So the safe move is easy. Keep battery cases, charging cases, and similar small battery-powered accessories in your carry-on, not your checked bag. And before you travel, take a second look at the little things, because sometimes it is not the expensive, obvious electronics that get people into trouble. It is the tiny ones they forgot were electronics at all. Number 3. Loose spare camera batteries. This is one of those things travelers pack without even thinking. You have your camera, maybe an extra lens, maybe a charger, and then you toss 2 or 3 spare batteries into a little pocket and head to the airport. It feels harmless. But to TSA and the FAA, loose spare lithium batteries are a real problem if they are packed the wrong way. Spare lithium batteries are not allowed in checked baggage, and they need protection against short circuits when carried in the cabin, and that is where people get caught. It is not always the camera itself. The camera can often travel fine. It is the loose spare batteries rolling around in a pouch, rubbing against coins, keys, metal parts, or each other that create the risk. FAA guidance says spare batteries should be protected from damage and short circuit, including by insulating terminals, keeping them in original packaging, or placing each one in a separate bag or protective pouch. What makes this one so annoying is that photographers, vloggers, and even regular travelers bring spare camera batteries all the time. It is normal, it is practical, it is smart, really. Nobody wants their camera dying halfway through a trip, but if those batteries are just loose in a backpack, that being prepared moment can suddenly turn into a security delay you were not expecting. And this one can get expensive fast. Camera batteries are not cheap, especially the brand name ones. So the last thing you want is to be standing there while an agent looks at a handful of loose batteries and starts asking questions you were not ready for. It is such a small packing mistake, but it can cause a very big headache. The safe way to do it is simple. Keep spare camera batteries in your carry-on only, never in checked luggage, and protect each one properly. A battery case, original packaging, terminal covers, or even separate small plastic pouches are a much better idea than letting them bounce around loose in your bag. Number 4. Rechargeable lithium, AA, AAA, and 9-volt batteries. This one surprises people because they look so ordinary. They do not look like airport problem electronics at all. They look like the same little batteries you would use at home for a camera, a light, a microphone, or some random gadget in a drawer, so travelers toss them into a pocket, a toiletry bag, or the bottom of a backpack and think nothing of it. But if they are rechargeable lithium batteries, airport rules treat them very differently from plain old regular household batteries. Spare lithium batteries are supposed to go in your carry-on, not checked luggage, and the terminals need to be protected so they cannot touch metal or short out. TSA says spare uninstalled lithium batteries must be carried in carry-on baggage only, and FAA says the terminals must be protected from short circuit with things like original packaging, tape, a battery case, or a separate pouch. And this is where people get caught. It is not always some huge expensive gadget causing the issue. Sometimes it is just a few little rechargeable batteries rattling around loose next to keys, coins, zippers, chargers, or other electronics. That looks messy, careless, and risky fast. Even a tiny battery can become a problem if the ends are exposed and not packed properly. FAA and IATA both say spare lithium batteries should be individually protected against short circuits. The 9-volt ones are especially easy to forget about, and they can be worse because of the way the terminals sit together on top. If those terminals touch metal, that is exactly the kind of thing you do not want happening inside a packed travel bag. So the safe move is simple. If you're bringing rechargeable lithium AA, AAA, or 9-volt batteries, keep them in your carry-on and protect each one properly. Do not just throw them loose into a bag and hope for the best, because these are the kind of normal-looking little items that can still create a very real airport problem. Number 5. Arc lighters and plasma lighters. This is one of those items people pack thinking it is modern, small, and probably safer than an old-fashioned lighter. It does not even look that dramatic. A lot of them are sleek, rechargeable, and sold as these neat little travel gadgets. But that is exactly why they can catch people off guard at the airport. Because even though they look simple, these are lithium battery-powered lighters. TSA says arc lighters, electronic lighters, and e-lighters are allowed in carry-on bags only, not checked bags, and the lithium battery must stay within the normal battery limits. FAA also says steps have to be taken to stop them turning on by accident while on board, and they cannot be recharged on the plane, and that is where the mistake happens. People toss one into checked luggage, or they throw it into a bag without thinking about whether the button could get pressed, or whether it has any kind of cover or lock. Then suddenly this tiny little gadget becomes the thing that gets flagged, not because it looks huge or expensive, but because it combines a battery with a built-in heating element, which is exactly the kind of combination airport rules care about. This one is especially sneaky because travelers hear the word lighter and think all lighters must follow the same rule. They do not. FAA says lithium battery-powered lighters are carry-on only, while torch lighters are not allowed in the cabin or checked baggage under normal passenger rules. So people who think it's just a lighter can get caught out fast. So the safe move is simple. If you are bringing an arc lighter or plasma lighter, keep it in your carry-on only. Make sure it cannot switch on by accident and do not charge it on the plane, because this is exactly the sort of small, modern gadget people assume is no big deal, right until airport security decides it is. Number 6. Cordless hair tools without the safety cover. This is one of those airport problems that feels ridiculous right up until it happens to you. A cordless hair straightener or curler looks like a normal beauty item. It feels personal, expensive, completely harmless. And because people use them all the time in hotels, airports, and on trips, they assume they can just throw one into a bag and go. But cordless hair tools are a lot more restricted than people realize. TSA says cordless hair straighteners or curling irons that contain lithium batteries or are butane-fueled are only allowed in carry-on bags, not checked bags, and the safety cover has to be securely fitted over the heating element. FAA says the same thing for cordless curling irons with gas cartridges. One per person, carry-on only, with a safety cover firmly in place. By contrast, regular corded hair straighteners and curling irons are not restricted the same way, and that is exactly why this catches people out. They hear hair straightener and think all of them follow the same rule. They do not. The second it is cordless, battery-powered, or butane-fueled, the risk changes. Now you have a heat-producing device that could switch on accidentally in a bag, and that is what security cares about. FAA guidance also says devices with installed batteries need protection from accidental activation if they could create significant heat. So the trap is not just the tool itself, it is the missing cap, the loose cover, the fact that it is packed in checked luggage because someone thought, it's just a straightener. Then suddenly this expensive beauty gadget becomes the reason your bag gets pulled or your item gets stopped. And these things are not cheap either. Some cordless styling tools cost a lot more than people expect, so this is not the kind of mistake you want to make in a rush at the airport. It is one of those annoying little travel errors that can turn into a very expensive lesson. So the safe move is simple. If your styling tool is cordless, keep it in your carry-on, not your checked bag, and make sure the safety cover is actually on and secure. And honestly, if you want the easiest option, a regular corded hair tool is much less likely to cause drama at the airport. Number 7. Heated jackets, gloves, and vests with the battery attached. This is the kind of thing people pack thinking it is no different from a normal jacket. It looks soft, harmless, and practical, especially if you're flying somewhere cold. But the second that clothing has a lithium battery pack and built-in heating elements, airport rules start looking at it very differently. TSA says heated jackets and sweaters are allowed, but with special instructions, and FAA guidance says battery-powered heat-producing devices can travel only when a component like the battery, fuse, or heat element is isolated, so the item cannot switch on and generate heat by accident during transport. That is what catches people out. It is not just a jacket anymore. It is a battery-powered heat device, and if the battery is still plugged in, the controls are exposed, or the item could turn on inside a tightly packed bag, that suddenly becomes a much bigger issue than most travelers expect. FAA also says spare lithium batteries have to stay in carry-on baggage and be protected from short circuits, not tossed loosely into checked luggage. So this one feels unfair when it happens, because people are not packing something scary. They are packing winter gear. But airport screening is looking at the risk, not the vibe. A jacket with a battery attached can look a lot different on screening than a plain jacket, especially if the battery is still connected and everything is packed in a way that could let it heat up by mistake. And these are not cheap either. Some heated jackets and vests cost a lot of money, so this is not the kind of thing you want to be arguing about at security while trying to make your flight. The smart move is simple. Remove the battery pack, keep that battery in your carry-on, protect it properly, and pack the clothing itself separately. That way it looks a lot more like what it really should be at the airport, just clothing, not a heat and battery problem waiting to happen. Number 8. Electric razors and trimmers that can switch on in checked baggage. This is one of those electronics people never worry about because it feels so normal. An electric razor is not a hoverboard. It is not a drone. It is not some giant battery pack that looks suspicious the second you pull it out. It is just a grooming item most people would never guess could cause airport trouble. But this is where people get caught. FAA says battery-powered devices that can create heat must be protected from accidental activation during transport, and that includes things like electric shavers if they could turn on inside a bag and generate enough heat to become dangerous. TSA allows electric razors in both carry-on and checked bags, but allowed does not mean pack it carelessly and forget about it. TSA.gov, FAA.gov. And that is the difference a lot of travelers miss. Something can be allowed, but still become a problem if it is packed in a way that looks unsafe. If the button can be pressed by mistake, if the device is loose in a packed checked bag, or if it has a weak lock and can switch on when things shift around, that is when your ordinary little razor suddenly turns into the item you wish you had packed better. This is especially easy to imagine because checked luggage gets thrown around, stacked, pressed, and moved constantly. So if you have ever packed an electric razor loosely next to clothes and random travel gear, it is not hard to see how the power button could get pushed without you even knowing. Then, instead of just being a shaving tool, it becomes a heat-producing battery device sitting in a sealed bag where nobody is watching it. And the annoying part is that this is such a basic, everyday travel item. People bring razors all the time. They are not trying to break rules. They are just not thinking about accidental activation. Because most people do not pack a trimmer thinking, could this switch itself on at 35,000 feet? The safer move is simple. If your razor or trimmer has a travel lock, use it. If it has a removable battery, make sure it is secured properly. And if you are putting it in checked baggage, pack it so the button cannot be pressed by other items shifting around. Because even ordinary electronics can become a headache at the airport when they are packed like an afterthought. Number 9. Dead laptops, phones, and tablets. TSA asks you to power on. This one feels especially brutal because the device itself might be completely normal. It is not oversized. It is not some weird gadget. It is just your laptop, your phone, your tablet, maybe even the one thing you absolutely need for the trip. But if TSA asks you to turn it on and it cannot power up, that can become a real problem very fast. TSA says officers may ask you to power up your electronic device, including cell phones and powerless devices, will not be permitted on board the aircraft. That warning appears on TSA's screening guidance and item pages, which is why this catches people so off guard. People think, it's allowed, so I'm fine. But allowed does not help much if the battery is dead when they want to inspect it. And this is what makes it such a stressful airport moment. Maybe your phone battery died in the rideshare on the way there. Maybe your tablet has not been charged in weeks. Maybe your laptop was already low and now will not boot. To you, it is just flat. To security, it can become a device they cannot properly assess on the spot. That is what makes this one feel so unfair. You're not breaking some obvious rule. You're not carrying a giant battery pack or a suspicious-looking gadget. You're just standing there with a dead everyday device, and suddenly, that alone can stop it from going any further. TSA's wording is very clear on that point. If it cannot power on when requested, it may not be allowed on board. And for travelers, this can get expensive and chaotic fast. A dead phone is bad enough. A dead laptop can be worse, especially if it has work files, personal information, or it is the thing you plan to use on the flight. Now, you're in that horrible airport moment where you're trying to find a charger, find an outlet, or explain yourself while the line keeps moving. So the smart move is simple. Charge your phone, laptop, tablet, camera, or any other larger electronic device before you leave for the airport. Do not assume it should still have a bit left is good enough. At airport security, almost charged and fully dead are two very different situations. Number 10. Large Bluetooth party speakers. This one catches people off guard because a speaker does not feel like a risky travel item. It feels fun. It feels normal. You're thinking about music at the beach, by the pool, at a holiday rental, maybe even just in your hotel room. But some of those bigger portable speakers are basically giant rechargeable battery packs with a speaker wrapped around them. And that is where the problem starts. TSA and FAA battery rules do not suddenly stop mattering just because the battery happens to be inside a speaker. Devices with lithium-ion batteries are still subject to the same size limits. FAA says lithium-ion batteries up to 100 watt-hours are generally allowed. 101 to 160 watt-hours can require airline approval, and anything over 160 watt-hours is forbidden on passenger aircraft. TSA says devices containing lithium batteries should be carried in carry-on baggage, and spare lithium batteries and power banks are prohibited in checked luggage. So the trap here is not that every portable speaker is banned. It is that a lot of travelers never check the battery size at all. They just see portable speaker and assume it is the same as bringing a little pair of headphones. But some party speakers are much larger, much more powerful, and much closer to the kind of battery thresholds airlines care about. If the watt-hour rating is over 100, airline approval may be needed. If it is over 160, it is not flying as normal passenger baggage. That is what makes this one annoying. It can be an expensive speaker, it can look completely harmless, and it can still become a problem because hardly anybody thinks to check speaker battery specs before going to the airport. Then suddenly what felt like a fun travel extra turns into the item slowing everything down. The smart move is simple. Before you fly, check whether the speaker has a lithium-ion battery and look for the watt-hour rating. If it is under 100 watt-hours, you are usually in a much safer zone. If it is between 101 and 160, check with the airline before you travel. And if the battery information is missing or impossible to verify, that is exactly the kind of thing that can create trouble you did not need. Number 11. Camera bags overloaded with spare lithium batteries. This is where a perfectly normal travel setup can start looking like a problem. A lot of people flying with camera gear do the same thing. One camera, maybe a second body, a charger, a few cords, and then a growing pile of spare batteries, just in case. And that is exactly how a normal camera bag can turn into something security pays a lot more attention to, because spare lithium batteries are carry-on only, and larger spare lithium-ion batteries in the 101 to 160 watt-hour range need airline approval. The issue is not that bringing camera batteries is banned. It is that travelers often bring too many, pack them loosely, or never check the battery size at all. FAA says spare lithium batteries need protection from short circuit, and TSA's battery guidance points back to the same size rules. Up to 100 watt-hours is generally allowed, 101 to 160 watt-hours can be allowed with airline approval, and above 160 watt-hours is generally prohibited for passenger travel. So, this one becomes stressful fast. Maybe you are a photographer, a content creator, or just someone who really does not want their camera dying on holiday. You think you are being prepared. But if your bag is stuffed with battery after battery, some are loose, some have faded labels, and you do not even know the watt-hour rating, that camera bag can suddenly look a lot less like prepared traveler and a lot more like, why are there this many lithium batteries in here? That does not automatically mean they are taken, but it absolutely can mean extra screening, questions, and a very annoying delay. And this is the kind of mistake that feels unfair because camera batteries are expensive, easy to justify, and really common. It is not some crazy gadget, it is normal gear. But airport rules care far more about the battery risk than about whether the item feels normal to you. The smart move is simple. Keep spare camera batteries in your carry-on, protect each one properly, check the watt-hour rating before you travel, and do not assume more is safer if you have not checked whether your airline has quantity or approval limits for larger spares. That way your camera bag looks like organized travel gear, not a bag full of battery problems. Number 12. Drone batteries with worn-off labels. This is where things start getting a bit more serious, because drones are one of those travel items that already make airport staff pay closer attention. The drone itself might be fine, but the batteries are where the real trouble begins. TSA says drones containing lithium batteries may be prohibited in baggage depending on the battery setup, and FAA says spare lithium batteries must be carried in the cabin, not checked. Batteries up to 100 watt-hours are generally allowed, 101 to 160 watt-hours can require airline approval, and anything over 160 watt-hours is prohibited on passenger aircraft. And this is the trap. A lot of drone travelers know they have to bring their spare batteries in carry-on, but what they do not think about is whether the battery markings are still readable. If the watt-hour rating is scratched off, faded, covered, or impossible to verify quickly, that creates a problem right there at screening because the battery size matters. FAA guidance is very clear that the limits depend on watt-hours, and for larger spare batteries, there are even approval and quantity limits. That is why this one is so frustrating. You can do almost everything right, pack the drone carefully, bring the batteries in your carry-on, and still end up in an awkward delay because the label is too worn to prove what the battery actually is. And drone batteries are not cheap either, so this is not the kind of airport surprise anyone wants. There is another mistake people make too. They throw loose drone batteries into a pouch without protecting the terminals. FAA says spare lithium batteries have to be protected from damage and short circuit, not just tossed in with cables and other metal bits. So with drone batteries, you have two problems at once. The battery size needs to be clear, and the batteries need to be packed safely. The smart move is simple. Keep all spare drone batteries in your carry-on, check the watt-hour label before you travel, protect the terminals, and do not assume airport staff will just know your battery is fine if the markings are unreadable. With drones, the battery is often the real story. Number 13. Vape devices in checked baggage. This is one of the biggest airport mistakes people still make, because vapes are so common now that a lot of travelers forget airport rules treat them very differently from regular personal items. People toss them into a suitcase, leave them in a side pocket, or forget they are even there, and that is exactly where the trouble starts. TSA says electronic cigarettes and vaping devices are allowed only in carry-on baggage, not checked bags. FAA says the same thing and adds that passengers have to take effective measures to prevent accidental activation, because these devices contain lithium batteries and heating elements. And that is what makes this one such a problem. A vape is not just a little gadget, it is a battery-powered heating device. So if it is sitting in checked baggage, or gets gate-checked at the last minute and you forget to remove it, that can become a serious issue fast. FAA specifically says electronic cigarettes, vaping devices, spare lithium batteries, and power banks must be removed from a carry-on if that bag gets checked at the gate, because they cannot stay in the cargo hold. This one also catches people because they think the small size makes it less important. It does not. Disposable vapes, vape pens, mods, and e-cigarettes all fall into the same basic fire risk category. FAA also says they must never be used or charged on the plane, which is another detail a lot of people do not know. So the stressful part is easy to picture. You are already in line, already trying to get through security, and then suddenly you realize your vape is in the wrong bag. Or worse, your carry-on gets taken for gate check and you forgot that your vape, spare batteries, or charging case were still inside. That is exactly the kind of small mistake that can turn into airport drama. The smart move is simple. Keep your vape on your person or in your carry-on, not in checked baggage. Make sure it cannot switch on by accident. Do not charge it on the plane. And if your bag is being gate-checked, take it out before that bag leaves your hands. Number 14. Smart luggage with non-removable batteries. This one feels especially painful because smart luggage sounds like the future. USB charging ports, built-in tracking, digital locks, maybe even self-weighing features. It all sounds clever, helpful, and exactly like the kind of thing frequent travelers should want. But one small design detail can turn that expensive suitcase into a major airport problem. FAA says baggage equipped with lithium batteries, including smart bags, must be carried as carry-on baggage unless the batteries are removed from the bag. And for checked baggage, they are only allowed in limited cases when the installed battery is extremely small, which is not how most smart luggage is designed. FAA's own guidance is blunt. Smart bags can be checked once the battery is removed. That is the trap. A lot of travelers hear smart suitcase and think, great, it's made for airports. But airport rules do not care how travel-friendly the marketing sounds. What matters is whether the lithium battery can be taken out quickly and easily. If it cannot, or if the battery is built in and effectively stuck there, that suitcase can go from clever travel upgrade to something you are suddenly arguing about at the airport. And this is what makes it so frustrating. These bags are not cheap. People buy them because they want travel to feel easier, not harder. Then they get told the battery has to come out, and if it cannot come out by hand, or they did not even realize that was a rule, now they are stuck making a horrible choice right there in front of everyone. Try to fix it on the spot, abandon the bag, or scramble for another solution. It gets worse if you plan to check it. FAA says smart bags with lithium batteries generally cannot go into checked baggage unless the battery is removed, and any removed spare lithium battery then has to follow the normal carry-on battery rules. So the smart move is simple. If you are buying smart luggage, make sure the battery is removable and easy to take out without tools. If you already own one, check that before you ever leave for the airport. Because with smart bags, the smartest feature is not the charger or the tracker, it is whether the battery pops out when airport staff say it has to. Number 15. Portable projectors with oversized batteries. This one catches people off guard because a mini projector feels like such a harmless travel gadget. It is small, neat, and made for entertainment. You picture movie nights in a hotel room, holiday rentals, maybe showing photos on a wall, and it does not feel anything like the kind of item airport security would care about. But once a portable projector has a lithium battery inside, especially a larger one, it falls under the same battery rules as other battery-powered electronics. FAA says lithium-ion batteries up to 100 watt-hours are generally allowed. Batteries from 101 to 160 watt-hours need airline approval, and anything over 160 watt-hours is prohibited on passenger aircraft. Devices with lithium batteries are also recommended for carry-on, not checked baggage. That is the trap here. People do not usually check projector battery specs before flying. They think of size, shape, and convenience, not watt-hours. But some mini projectors and portable beamers have surprisingly chunky battery packs inside, and once the battery size starts pushing into those higher limits, that fun little travel gadget can become something the airline needs to approve first. If the battery is over 160 watt-hours, it is not going as normal passenger baggage at all. And this one gets more annoying because it does not look dramatic. It is not a scooter. It is not a giant speaker. It is not something that screams battery hazard to the average traveler. So people pack it without thinking, and then suddenly they are the ones being asked questions about a device they assumed was no big deal. That is exactly the kind of airport surprise people hate. The smart move is simple. Before you fly with a portable projector, check whether it has an internal lithium battery and look for the watt-hour rating. If it is under 100 watt-hours, you are in a much safer zone. If it sits between 101 and 160, check with the airline before you travel. And if you cannot verify the battery size clearly, that alone can turn a fun travel extra into a frustrating airport delay. Number 16. Rechargeable camping lanterns and emergency lights. This is the kind of item people pack because they are trying to be prepared. Maybe it is for a cabin stay, a camping trip after the flight, a storm kit, or just one of those travel gadgets that seems smart to have with you. And because it feels practical and useful, most people never stop to think that a rechargeable lantern or emergency light can run into the exact same battery rules as other electronics. TSA says devices containing lithium batteries should be carried in carry-on baggage when possible, and FAA says spare lithium batteries are never allowed in checked baggage. Devices with lithium batteries can go in checked baggage only if they are powered off, protected from accidental activation, and packed to prevent damage. That is what catches people out. A camping lantern does not feel like a restricted electronic. It feels more like gear. Something useful. Something responsible. But if it has a built-in lithium battery, or worse, spare battery packs tossed in with it, then airport staff are not looking at it as just a light anymore. They are looking at the battery risk. And if that lantern can generate heat, switch on by accident, or has loose spare batteries packed with it, that harmless little emergency item can suddenly become the reason your bag gets extra attention. This one also gets messy because people often pack these with other outdoor or emergency gear, and that gear is not always packed neatly. So now you have a rechargeable lantern bouncing around next to cables, metal items, chargers, or spare batteries, and that is exactly the sort of careless setup you do not want when flying. FAA says spare batteries must be protected from damage and short circuit, and larger lithium-ion batteries between 101 and 160 watt-hours need airline approval, while anything over 160 watt-hours is generally not allowed on passenger aircraft. So, the smart move is simple. If your lantern or emergency light has a lithium battery, keep it in your carry-on when you can, make sure it is switched fully off, and do not pack loose spare batteries with it unless they are protected properly. And before you travel, check the battery size. because even something as innocent-looking as a portable lantern can become an airport problem once the battery inside starts mattering. Number 17. Satellite messengers and personal locator beacons. This is one of those items that most travelers never bring, but the people who do usually really depend on them. Hikers, campers, remote workers, people going off-grid, people heading somewhere with bad phone coverage. For them, this is not just another gadget, it is the device they are counting on if something goes seriously wrong. And that is exactly why airport problems with these can be such a nightmare. TSA's item pages show that things like EPIRBs, GPS devices, and radios are generally allowed. But once a device contains lithium batteries, the battery rules still matter. FAA says spare lithium batteries must stay in carry-on baggage. Larger lithium-ion batteries from 101 to 160 watt-hours may need airline approval, and batteries over 160 watt-hours are generally prohibited on passenger aircraft. T is where people get caught. They focus on the device itself and forget the battery side of it, or they pack it in a way that could let it switch on by accident. And with emergency communication devices, that matters even more, because an accidental activation is not just annoying, it can create a serious false alert problem. So even if the device itself is allowed, the way it is packed can still turn it into an airport headache. This one also feels especially unfair because these are safety devices. People are bringing them to protect themselves, not to break rules. But airport rules do not really care whether something is a life-saving gadget or a fun gadget. If it has a lithium battery, if the battery specs are unclear, if spare batteries are packed wrong, or if the device could activate by mistake, that is when trouble starts. And these are not cheap either. A lot of satellite messengers and locator beacons cost good money, so this is not the sort of item you want questioned when you're already trying to catch a flight. The smart move is simple. Keep the device and any spare batteries in your carry-on, not checked baggage. Make sure the device cannot switch on by accident. Check the battery information before you travel. And if it uses a larger battery or anything unusual, check with the airline before you leave for the airport. Because with these devices, the stress is not just losing money. It is losing something you may actually need later. Number 18. Medical spare batteries. This one is a really big deal, because when travelers pack spare batteries for a medical device, they are not bringing some optional gadget for fun. They are bringing something they may genuinely need. That is why mistakes here can be so stressful. It is not just about losing money, it is about losing peace of mind on the trip. FAA says travelers using portable oxygen concentrators need to bring enough spare batteries and carry-on baggage for the duration of the flight, and those spare batteries must be protected from damage and short circuit. TSA also says larger lithium-ion batteries from 101 to 160 watt-hours may be allowed only with airline approval, with a limit of 2 spare larger batteries per person. That is where people get caught out. They know the device matters, but they do not always realize the spare batteries have their own rules. A bigger battery may need airline approval. A spare battery cannot just be tossed into checked luggage. And if the battery terminals are exposed or the markings are unclear, that can create even more stress at the airport. FAA's battery chart is very clear that spare larger lithium-ion batteries must be carry-on only, protected from damage and short circuit, and over 160 watt-hours is forbidden. This one also feels unfair because the people carrying these batteries are usually already trying to manage enough. They are thinking about their health, their device, the flight, the timing, maybe whether they have enough battery life for delays, and now they also have to think about battery approval rules and packing rules on top of that. It is exactly the kind of airport stress nobody wants. So the smart move is simple. Keep all spare medical batteries in your carry-on, protect each one properly. Check the watt-hour rating before you travel, and contact the airline ahead of time if the batteries are larger or the device has special requirements. With this category, it is much better to over-prepare than be stuck sorting it out at the airport. Number 19. Mobility devices with battery issues. This one is a much bigger deal than most people realize, because once you're talking about mobility scooters and battery-powered wheelchairs, the rules get more serious, more specific, and a lot less forgiving. And that makes sense, because these are not little travel gadgets. These are essential devices people may genuinely depend on. TSA says wheelchairs and other mobility devices are allowed through screening, but they are not permitted in the cabin in the normal sense and go through special handling. FAA then adds the battery rules, and this is where it gets tricky. For lithium-ion powered mobility devices, the battery size is limited to 300 watt-hours. If the battery is installed and protected by design, the device is checked, not carried on. If the battery is removed because it is not adequately protected, that removed battery must travel in carry-on baggage only. FAA also says spare mobility device batteries are limited to 1 spare up to 300 watt-hours, or 2 spares up to 160 watt-hours each, carry-on only. That is why this can become such an airport headache. It is not just bring your mobility scooter and go. The airline may need to know the battery type, the watt-hour rating, whether the battery stays installed, whether it has to be removed, and where that removed battery will travel. If the details are unclear, or if the battery markings are missing, that can create a stressful delay right when the traveler least needs one. And this is one of the categories where people often need to prepare in advance. FAA specifically notes that for wheelchairs and mobility devices with spillable, non-spillable, or dry batteries, passengers should contact their airline because advanced arrangements and extra check-in time may be necessary. So this is not the kind of thing you want to figure out at the airport counter 5 minutes before boarding. What makes it worse is that a traveler may have done nothing wrong in the everyday sense. They are just bringing the device they rely on. But if the battery specs are unclear, the battery is damaged, the airline was not told ahead of time, or the battery is packed the wrong way, that can turn a necessary travel aid into a very stressful airport problem. So the smart move is simple. Before flying, check the exact battery type and watt-hour rating, tell the airline in advance, allow extra airport time, and make sure you know whether the battery stays installed or must be removed and carried on. With mobility devices, the battery rules matter just as much as the device itself. Number 20. Oversized Pro Camera Batteries. This is where regular travel electronics start turning into serious battery territory. A normal little camera battery is one thing. But once you get into professional camera gear, cinema rigs, broadcast kits, and those bigger brick-style batteries, you're dealing with a completely different level of airport rules. FAA says lithium-ion batteries up to 100 watt-hours are generally allowed. Bigger spare batteries from 101 to 160 watt-hours may be allowed, but only with airline approval, and there is a limit of 2 spare larger batteries per person. Anything over 160 watt-hours is prohibited on passenger aircraft. TSA points to the same rule for larger lithium batteries. That is what makes this one such a trap. A lot of travelers assume a camera battery is just a camera battery. It is not. Once you move into pro-level equipment, some batteries are far bigger than people realize. FAA's camera packing guidance even notes that camera batteries can range from around 30 watt-hours all the way up to 250 watt-hours, which means some of them are absolutely in the zone where approval is needed, and some are not flying at all. And this one can get expensive fast. These are not cheap little accessories. A pro battery can cost serious money, and if you are traveling for work, it is probably tied to important gear you actually need. So the last thing you want is to be at the airport realizing the battery you brought is over the limit, needs approval you never got, or has markings that are too worn to read clearly. This is also where people make the classic mistake of thinking, I'll just put it in checked baggage. That does not solve it. Spare larger lithium-ion batteries are forbidden in checked baggage, and batteries over 160 watt-hours are prohibited on passenger aircraft entirely. The smart move is simple. Check the watt-hour rating on every Pro camera battery before you travel. If it is 100 watt-hours or less, you are usually in the safer zone. If it is 101 to 160, contact the airline ahead of time and know that you are limited to 2 spare larger batteries. If it is over 160, do not assume it is coming with you on a passenger flight. Number 21. Electric scooters and hoverboards. This is where the list starts getting seriously expensive because people do not just toss one of these into a bag by accident. If someone is trying to fly with a hoverboard, self-balancing scooter, or similar ride-on gadget, they are usually bringing something big, expensive, and battery-heavy. And that is exactly why airport rules get much harsher here. FAA says these portable recreational vehicles are only allowed under strict conditions, and a lithium-ion battery over 160 watt-hours is prohibited as both carry-on and checked baggage. For batteries over 100 watt-hours, airline approval is required, and many airlines may refuse the device altogether or only allow it in very limited ways. FAA even notes that many self-balancing scooters sit around 158.4 watt-hours, which means they are already right near the edge, while many unicycle scooters and Segway-style devices exceed 160 watt-hours and are therefore prohibited. That is what makes this one such a brutal airport trap. A lot of travelers think it's rechargeable, so it must just follow the normal electronics rules. Not really. These are not being treated like a phone or a laptop. They are being treated like large battery-powered recreational vehicles, and that puts them into a much stricter category. TSA says hoverboards can get through the checkpoint, but travelers still have to check with the airline, which is the part that catches people out. Getting through screening is not the same thing as the airline agreeing to carry it. And this is why the airport moment can get ugly fast. You have a big, awkward device, a battery that may be close to or over the limit, and an airline that may not want it at all. If the watt-hour rating is not clearly marked, FAA says the airline may require proof of battery size. If the device is damaged, recalled, or likely to generate dangerous heat, FAA says it must not be carried aboard unless made safe. So the smart move is simple. Before you even think about taking an electric scooter or hoverboard to the airport, check the exact watt-hour rating, make sure it is clearly marked, and contact the airline directly. Because with these, the risk is not just a delay. It is turning up with a bulky, expensive device that the airline may refuse outright. Number 22. Recalled electronics and swollen batteries. This is where the list stops being just annoying and starts feeling genuinely serious. Because once a battery is swollen, cracked, leaking, overheating, or part of a recalled device, the issue is not really, did you pack it right, anymore. Now the issue is whether that device is safe to be on the aircraft at all. FAA says devices with recalled batteries, damaged batteries, or batteries likely to create sparks or generate dangerous heat must not be carried aboard an aircraft unless the recalled or damaged component has been removed or the device has been made safe. TSA also says spare lithium batteries and power banks must follow battery safety rules, which becomes even more important if a battery is visibly damaged. And this one is easier to miss than people think. A lot of travelers have seen the warning signs before and ignored them. A phone that feels hotter than normal. A power bank that looks a bit puffy. An old laptop with a battery bulging under the case. A device wrapped in tape because it has started splitting. People tell themselves it is probably still fine for one more trip. That is exactly the kind of thinking that can create a very big airport problem. Because from airport staff's point of view, a swollen or recalled battery is not just a rule issue, it is a fire risk issue. FAA's Pack Safe guidance is very clear that damaged, defective, or recalled lithium batteries that may overheat or create sparks are not allowed unless they are made safe by removing the battery or otherwise neutralizing the hazard. This is also one of the most expensive mistakes on the list, because the kinds of electronics that get swollen batteries are often the ones people rely on most: phones, laptops, tablets, cameras, older power banks, and other everyday gear. So now you are not just risking a delay, you are risking the one device you actually need being stopped because it is no longer considered safe enough to travel. The smart move is simple. If a battery looks swollen, cracked, leaking, unusually hot, or the device has been subject to a safety recall, do not assume you can just bring it anyway and hope nobody notices. Deal with it before the airport. Replace the battery, repair the device properly, or leave it behind. Because once a battery looks damaged, airport staff are not going to treat it like an ordinary electronic anymore. Number 23. Heat plus battery combo gadgets. This is where things get a lot more serious, because once an electronic device combines a lithium battery with something that creates heat, airport rules start paying a lot more attention. That could be a heated lunchbox, an electronic hand warmer, a heated massager, a heated lamp, certain grooming tools, or any other gadget that can get hot if it switches on by accident. FAA says battery-powered heat-producing devices are only allowed when a component like the battery, fuse, or heat element is isolated, so the device cannot accidentally turn on and generate heat during transport. That is what makes this one such a hidden trap. A lot of these items do not look dangerous. They look useful. Comforting even. People pack them because they're trying to make travel easier. But airport safety rules do not really care whether the gadget feels harmless. They care whether it can create heat inside a bag with a lithium battery attached. FAA's broader battery guidance says lithium battery devices in checked baggage must be completely powered off and protected from unintentional activation, and if the device is capable of generating extreme heat, the heating element has to be mitigated by removing the heating element, battery, or another component. And this one is especially frustrating because people often assume small equals safe. It does not. A compact electronic hand warmer or tiny heated gadget can still become a problem if it can turn on by itself in a tightly packed bag. That is why this category feels so sneaky. It is not one famous banned item. It is a whole group of ordinary-looking gadgets that suddenly become an issue because they combine the two things airport rules care about most here: lithium batteries and heat. The smart move is simple. If a gadget both heats up and runs on a lithium battery, do not pack it casually. Make sure it is fully off, protected from accidental activation, and if possible, isolate or remove the battery or heating component before you travel. Because once a device can generate heat on its own, airport staff are not looking at it as just another gadget anymore. Number 24. Spare batteries over 160 watt-hours. This is the point where airport rules stop being a gray area and become very blunt. Because once a spare lithium-ion battery goes over 160 watt-hours, you are no longer in the maybe with approval category. FAA says batteries from 101 to 160 watt-hours may be allowed with airline approval, but anything exceeding 160 watt-hours is forbidden on passenger aircraft. That is one of the clearest battery cutoffs in the whole travel rulebook, and this is where people get caught. A lot of travelers know there are battery rules, but they do not know the exact line where the answer changes from check with the airline to no. Bigger camera batteries, some power stations, some mobility-related spares, some pro gear, and other heavy-duty batteries can fall into that over 160 range. Once they do, this is not the kind of thing you fix by moving it from one bag to another. The problem is the battery itself. FAA's current passenger guidance says batteries exceeding 160 watt-hours are forbidden, and its recent passenger safety reminders say the same thing. That is what makes this one such a nasty surprise. With a lot of earlier items on this list, the problem was packing it wrong. With this one, the problem can be that the battery is simply too large to fly with you on a passenger plane at all. So if someone turns up at the airport thinking, "I'll just explain what it's for," that usually is not going to change the rule. FAA's battery chart is very clear that over 160 batteries are out. The smart move is simple. Before you fly, check the watt-hour rating on any larger spare battery. Under 100 watt-hours is the safer zone. Between 101 and 160 watt-hours means airline approval may be required. But over 160 watt-hours means do not assume it is coming with you on a passenger flight. Number 25. Any electronic device that is dead, damaged, modified, unlabeled, or packed in the wrong place. This is the big one, because it is really the hidden rule behind almost everything on this list. A lot of people think airport trouble only happens with weird gadgets or obviously dangerous electronics. But a completely normal item can still become a problem if security cannot verify it properly, if it looks unsafe, or if it is packed in a way that breaks the rules. TSA says officers may ask you to power up your electronic device, including cell phones, and powerless devices will not be permitted on board the aircraft. FAA says damaged, defective, or recalled lithium batteries and recalled devices containing them must not be carried in carry-on or checked baggage because they may overheat or catch fire. FAA also says spare lithium batteries must stay out of checked bags and battery terminals have to be protected. That means this final item is really the catch-all disaster category. Maybe it is a phone that will not turn on. Maybe it is a laptop with a bulging battery. Maybe it is a battery pack with no readable label. Maybe it is a vape left in a checked bag, or a spare battery rolling around loose in the bottom of a suitcase. On the surface, each of those looks like a different mistake, but underneath, they all trigger the same airport reaction. This device cannot be cleared as safe to fly the way it is, and that is why this is the strongest one to end on. Because the biggest airport electronics problem in 2026 is not just one specific gadget. It is travelers assuming that if an item looks normal, airport rules will treat it as normal too. They will not. The second a device is dead, damaged, modified in a suspicious way, missing clear battery information, or packed in the wrong place, that normal gadget can suddenly become the thing that delays you, gets surrendered, or does not fly with you at all. So the smartest thing you can do before any flight is simple. Charge your devices. Check for damage. Make sure labels are readable. Keep spare batteries in your carry-on. And do not assume airport staff will give you the benefit of the doubt if your electronics look questionable. Because in the end, the most expensive airport mistake is often not bringing the wrong gadget. It is bringing a normal gadget in the wrong condition. So the next time you pack for a flight, do not just think about what your electronics do, think about how airport security sees them. Because as you have seen, it is not always the biggest or most obvious item that causes the problem. Sometimes it is the dead phone. Sometimes it is the loose battery. Sometimes it is the vape in the wrong bag, the smart suitcase with the wrong battery setup, or the gadget that looked completely harmless until security said otherwise. And that is exactly why this matters. Because one small packing mistake can cost you time, money, stress, and in some cases, a very expensive item you were not planning to give up. So if this video helped you, make sure you give it a like, subscribe to Airport Tips and Tricks if you have not already, and share this with anyone you know who flies with gadgets, batteries, cameras, vapes, or tech in their bags. And do not click away just yet. On the end screen is another video that can save you from even more airport mistakes. And if you got value from this one, you're going to get a lot of value from that one too. Go watch that now, because the next thing airport security can stop you for might be something you would never expect.